good guys, Cameron Brown here. Today I'm excited to introduce you to the brand new SL68 Mark II from Suhr. The brand new SL68 Mark II is the next step in innovative design on the already much loved SL68. Although at first glance both amps look almost identical, the new model has a few tricks up its sleeve to make it the most versatile version of the SL68. The new model still has all the same features as the first one, for example the variac switch and the master volume, but now we have the addition of 3 new switches which really do make this amp extremely versatile. So as you can see, the SL68 Mark II looks very similar to the original SL68 with the addition of 3 new switches on the front panel. So the first switch is the fat switch. The fat switch gives you the option to turn the fat cap off, which was always on in the original SL68. The second switch is the mid boost switch, which really makes a difference when the amp's dimed. I'll show that later on in this video when I'm doing some playing. And the third switch is the bright switch. The bright switch you mostly only really notice when you're in the first input and the volume's sort of below 7 or 8. That's when you notice the biggest difference. When the amp's dimed you don't really notice a difference, but it's really subtle, but it can definitely help colour your tone to whatever way you want. Alright, so just to be completely transparent, so you guys know the signal chain and stuff before I start playing through the amp, I've got the SL68 running through the Suhr reactive load, which is going into Pro Tools. And if you hear any effects, I'm only really using reverb. That's coming from the Sunset Sound reverb plugin. It's pretty much just because it's my favourite reverb. But without any further ado, let's hear some tones. You know, as you can hear from that, with a sort of vintage style amp like this, it cleans up unbelievably well. You know, you've got a really glassy clean tone there, especially, you know, on the 4th position here. Also, it kind of does the old school sort of blues sort of sound. One of my favourite things about these kind of amps is just the amount of dynamics that you feel underneath your fingers. You know, like under your fingertips, if you play loud, you know, you get that kind of, you can almost hear the amp breaking up, but if you play soft, you know, it kind of works well with you. So one thing that I like to do with the clean tones is utilise the bright switch. I mean, you can really hear the difference. That's the same tone that I just had. But as soon as I engage the bright switch, really kind of brings it to life. So that's the bright switch in the first position. Let's check out what the bright switch sounds like in the second position. Okay, so now I've put everything to 12 o'clock with the exception of Presence, which I've put to around about 1 o'clock. So the tone that you get from that is kind of what I would say is sort of like a classic rock kind of tone, but let's check it out. So one of the really cool things about this tone that you can do is start, you know, using the fat switch. You guys will kind of get an example now when I play that same riff again, or roughly the same riff, but with the fat switch engaged. So as you can hear with the fat switch engaged, it kind of just gives the amp, kind of says what it does on the tin, you know, it kind of gives the amp a little more like tougher low end, makes it a bit punchier. And like I had mentioned earlier on in the video, the fat switch was always on the original SL68, but with this one, it kind of gives you the option to turn it off and it kind of gives the amp, without the fat switch, it kind of gives the amp a bit more of a sort of vintage kind of tone, whereas with the fat switch on, it kind of makes it a little bit tighter. Maybe if any of you guys have ever had like a modded old vintage style amp, probably that kind of tone. Moving on, now we're probably getting to my favourite kind of tones on the SL68 and kind of just generally my favourite tones in general, which is basically where you dime it. You have everything on 10 and it gives you that classic Eddie Van Halen, you know, hot rodded plexi kind of sound. So let's check that out. Man, I love that tone so much. So with the amp set this way, I'm going to pretty much do the exact same thing again, but with the fat switch on, and then I'll also, you know, try it out with the bright switch and kind of the mid boost, just to give you guys a little bit of a taste of, you know, what the different switches do and kind of how it affects the tone with this kind of sound. So here it is with the fat switch. Same again, but with the mid boost pushed. And lastly, I'm going to add in a little bit of the bright switch, which kind of just gives the amp a little bit more top end, a little bit more presence. You know, kind of what now people would say like a little bit more high gain. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the demo of the amp. Obviously I could go into way more detail, but we'd be sitting here all day, but for that exact reason, in the description below I've put a link to the Suhr website where you can actually find out all the information about the SL68 that I might have missed by accident, so be sure to check that out. With that being said, I think this is where I should probably end the video, so don't forget to like and subscribe and all that good stuff, and I'll catch you in the next one.